Taurus. After Easter Sunday, a beautiful shift began. You are being reborn from within. Have you ever felt like everything in your life is steady, even functional, and yet beneath the calm, something has quietly shifted? Like a part of you has been whispering, "I'm ready for something different," but you can't quite name what? If so, Taurus, you're not alone. And you're not lost. You're awakening. Hi, beautiful soul. I'm Sophia, psychologist, astrologer, and your guide here on Zodiac Wisdom. This space was created for women like you, grounded, generous, wise, who've spent decades holding families together, running businesses, managing emotions, and creating beautiful homes for others. But now your soul is asking for a homecoming too. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you've been with me before, thank you for returning. Be sure to like this video, share it with a fellow Taurus sister, and subscribe, because we are just beginning a journey that I believe will bring you back to parts of yourself you've gently tucked away for too long. In today's episode, we'll walk together through a 4-part journey, a personal awakening that may have quietly begun for you around Easter. It's not loud. It's not disruptive. It's more like a soft shifting inside your body, a desire for less noise, more truth, a quiet refusal to keep carrying what no longer feels like yours. We'll explore how your mind is softening, allowing real clarity to surface, why certain relationships feel different and what that means, the return of your joy, your purpose, your soul mission, and why the most powerful change you can make now might also be the gentlest. Stay with me until the end, because the final chapter may offer a truth you didn't know you needed, but once you hear it, it might change the way you move through the rest of this year. And please don't just listen. Talk to me in the comments. What part of today's message feels like it was written for you? What truth have you recently allowed yourself to finally feel? Because this isn't just a video, it's a conversation. And more than that, it's a community of women choosing presence over pressure, truth over performance, and a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. So, beautiful Taurus, are you ready to begin? Let's return to the part of you that's been quietly waiting for this moment. Chapter 1: The Mind Softens. A new kind of clarity for Taurus. Taurus, if there's one thing you've learned over the years, it's how to keep things going. You know how to steady the ship, how to plan, to prepare, to hold space for others, even when you're tired, even when no one sees what it costs you. But what happens when the steadiness starts to feel like heaviness? What happens when the mind that used to keep everything in order suddenly longs for quiet? Not because you're falling apart, but because you're finally ready to fall inward, to listen, to rest, to hear your own voice again. That's what I've been hearing from so many Taurus women lately, especially in the weeks since Easter. They're not in crisis, they're not confused, but they are different. There's a new kind of silence that's beginning to settle in. Not the kind that feels empty, but the kind that feels honest. Like the noise is finally starting to fade, and something real is rising in its place. You might be noticing it too. Maybe you're not overthinking as much. Maybe you've stopped replaying old conversations that used to live in your mind rent-free. Maybe you've found yourself letting go of the need to control every outcome, and for the first time you're okay with simply waiting. This is no accident. As a Taurus, your mind is your sanctuary. It doesn't race, it holds. You process slowly, thoroughly, with intention. But when life asks too much of you for too long, even your mind starts to harden, to grip, to overmanage, to protect. And that's not wrong. It's how you've survived. But now, something softer is beginning to emerge. And it's not because you've given up, it's because you're giving in. To truth, to simplicity, to the possibility that you don't need to know everything right now in order to feel safe. I'm thinking of Angela, a Taurus woman I've worked with recently. She's 53, runs her own home-based bookkeeping business, and has always prided herself on keeping things running, on time, in control, and perfectly planned. But the week after Easter, she told me something had shifted. She sat down at her desk, looked at her calendar, and simply closed it. She didn't cancel anything. She didn't abandon her responsibilities. She just paused. And for the first time in years, she said to herself, "I don't need to chase today. I need to feel today." So instead of pushing through, she took her tea outside, sat in the garden, watched the wind move through the leaves. No to-do list, no audiobooks, no scrolling, just breath. Just silence. Later, she told me it was the most mentally clear she had felt in years. That's what I want you to hear today, Taurus. Your clarity doesn't need to come from effort. It doesn't need to be forced or figured out. It needs space. Space for your inner voice to rise, uninterrupted. Space for your nervous system to unclench. Space for your mind to stop solving and start listening. And when you begin to create that space, even 5 minutes at a time, you'll start to notice something beautiful. You don't need to prove yourself to be at peace. You don't need to have the answer to feel aligned. You just need to be present with what's true, even if that truth is simply, I don't want to rush anymore. So today, I invite you to try something gentle. Find a quiet place. No pressure. No perfection. Sit down. Close your eyes. And ask yourself this. What truth am I ready to stop resisting? Let whatever comes be enough. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to act on it. Just notice it. Let it speak. Let your mind soften. Because Taurus, you are not here to carry the mental weight of the world forever. You are here to think beautifully, to dream deliberately, to create a life that feels calm, not just looks composed. This is your moment. Not to change everything. Not to figure it all out. But to come back to the one place that always holds the answer. You. And in the next chapter, we'll talk about something that's often harder than managing your thoughts. Navigating the relationships that no longer feel aligned with your inner peace. Because as your mind clears, your connections shift too. But for now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you noticed your thoughts becoming quieter lately? Is there something your mind is finally letting go of? Leave a comment and let's make space for each other's truth. Because when we speak it out loud, we remind ourselves, we were never alone in this. Chapter 2, When Relationships Shift. Choosing peace over performance. Taurus, if there's one thing that defines you in love, friendship, and family, it's devotion. When you love, you root yourself deep. You show up. You stay. You hold space even when no one holds it for you. You believe in loyalty not as a concept but as a way of life. But what happens when the relationships you've been loyal to no longer feel loyal to you? Not because someone betrayed you. Not because of conflict or drama. But because something in your energy has quietly shifted. This is the experience I've been hearing over and over lately from Taurus women, especially in the weeks since Easter. It's not that people are suddenly cruel or distant. It's that conversations feel heavier. Check-ins feel like obligations. Certain connections, once nurturing, now feel like emotional labor. And you may be asking yourself, why does this feel so different now? Taurus, it's not that something's wrong. It's that you're realigning. As your mind begins to clear, so does your emotional landscape. You're becoming more sensitive to energy, who lifts you, who depletes you, who you feel safe with, and who you feel the need to perform for. And let's be honest, you've performed a lot over the years. You've smiled through exhaustion. You've offered warmth when you had none left. You've shown up to keep peace, even when it cost you your own. Because that's what you were taught to do. Because that's what being a good friend, a good daughter, a good partner seemed to require. But now, something in you is no longer willing. Not in anger. Not in resentment. But in quiet clarity. You're no longer willing to maintain relationships that require you to be someone you're not. You're no longer willing to tolerate conversations where your silence is expected, but your truth is not welcome. You're no longer willing to be praised for your strength, when what you need is space to be soft. I think of Denise, a Taurus client of mine. She's 49, owns a successful plant and pottery studio, and is the rock in her community. The one people call when they need advice, a meal, a place to land. But lately, she told me, she's been feeling drained after conversations. Not just tired but hollow. Like she was pouring from a place that had long gone dry. So she began to pull back. Not with harsh words. Not with a dramatic exit. Just quietly, slowly, choosing silence over explaining. Declining invitations. Answering texts a little later. Letting herself be absent without guilt. And something beautiful happened. She didn't lose her true connections. She found them. One friend, whom she thought she'd outgrown, reached out and said, I miss how real our conversations used to be. Can we meet without the group? And they did. And it was deeper, quieter, truer. This is what I want you to understand, Taurus. When you begin choosing peace over performance, the right people won't resent your shift. They'll respect it. They'll rise to meet it. Because true relationships aren't built on how much you give. They're built on how much you're allowed to be yourself. And sometimes, yes, people will fade. You'll outgrow certain dynamics. There may be silence where there once was constant chatter. And that can feel like loss. But often, it's just space being created for what's more aligned. So if you've been feeling distant from someone lately, not because of anger, but because of something softer, more sacred, honor that. It doesn't mean the relationship is over. It means your role in it is evolving. You don't need to chase connections that no longer see you. You don't need to explain your boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. You don't need to apologize for being more of who you are, and less of who they prefer. This is the real love story now. You returning to relationships where you are not just useful but seen. So ask yourself gently, which relationships feel natural now, and which feel maintained? Where do you leave feeling light? And where do you leave feeling like you've performed? These answers matter. They don't make you selfish. They make you sovereign. And in the next chapter, we'll explore how this clarity creates space for something even deeper. Your soul mission. Because as your energy returns, so does your passion. And the things that once lit you up, whether from long ago or newly emerging, are starting to whisper again. But before we go there, I want to hear from you. Have any of your relationships quietly shifted lately? Have you pulled back, not out of anger but out of honesty? Share in the comments. Let your truth breathe. Because Taurus, you deserve relationships that feel like rest, not performance. Chapter 3: Reconnecting to your real joy. Your soul mission was never lost. There comes a time, Taurus, when what used to satisfy you doesn't anymore. Not because you're ungrateful, not because anything is wrong, but because your soul is quietly longing for more. Not more stuff, not more status, but more aliveness. And that beautiful soul is not a crisis. It's a calling. Over the past few weeks, I've heard the same story from many Taurus women. They don't feel broken. They don't want to start over. But they do want to feel something again. Something real. Something rooted. Something that belongs to them, not to their children, not to their clients, not to their spouse. Just theirs. This is what I call a soul mission moment. And for you, Taurus, it's not loud or flashy. It begins in the quiet places. In a drawer you haven't opened in years. In a photo that brings back a version of you you forgot you missed. In a conversation that stirs an old dream from sleep. I'm thinking now of Marlene, 56, a Taurus woman I've worked with who spent the last 2 decades managing her family's catering business. Efficient, capable, generous to a fault. But somewhere along the way, her own joy had been put in storage, right next to her easel and oils. She hadn't painted in almost 15 years. Until one afternoon, after clearing out a corner of the garage, she found her old supplies. And something inside her didn't ask, "Should I?" said, "Start." She didn't post it online. She didn't try to sell it. She just painted. In silence. For hours. Later she told me, "I forgot how alive color made me feel." That's the moment we're talking about. You see, Taurus, you were never meant to hustle your way to meaning. You were meant to grow it. Tend it. Return to it like a garden that blooms again each season, if you give it light and space. And if lately you felt the stir of something small but persistent, a hobby, a calling, a part of you that once felt essential but has gone neglected, please don't ignore it. That's not a distraction. That's direction. You don't need to monetize it. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to justify why it matters. If it makes you feel like yourself again, it matters. This is where your true wealth lies. Not in productivity but in presence. Not in how much you can accomplish, but in how fully you can reconnect with what sets your soul aglow. And I know it can feel indulgent, even irresponsible. You've spent years holding everything together. There's always laundry, deadlines, meals, bills. But Taurus, you can't keep waiting for the world to give you permission to enjoy your life. You have to give that permission to yourself. Start where you are. With 5 minutes. With a song. With your hands in the dirt, the dough, the ink, the page. Because here's the truth. Your purpose isn't just a job or a role. It's a frequency. It's the vibration of being in harmony with yourself. And when you allow that frequency to rise without shame, without delay, you begin to shift everything around you. Not because you changed your whole life, but because you finally started listening to the part of you that always knew what mattered. So let me ask you this. What did you once love that you quietly set aside? What's been tapping at the edges of your awareness, asking for just a little time, a little space, a little light? Write it down, whisper it, honor it, and in the next chapter, I'll show you how to begin again. Not with a big move, but with one small step that could change your entire inner landscape. But before we go there, I'd love to hear from you. Is there something calling you back? A joy, a spark, a passion that still lives inside you? Leave it in the comments. Because the moment you name it, you begin to reclaim it. And Taurus, your soul mission was never lost. It was just patiently waiting for you to come home. Chapter 4: The Sacred Power of One Small Step. Taurus, I know something about you that you may have forgotten. You don't rush. You don't leap. You don't burn down your life in the name of transformation. You move with care, with patience, with purpose. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom. But even the most grounded soul reaches a moment when stillness becomes stagnation, when waiting becomes avoidance, when clarity isn't enough, because something inside you is ready to act. And here's the beautiful part. The action doesn't have to be big. In fact, it shouldn't be. Because Taurus, your transformation is not about intensity. It's about intention. You don't need a 5-year plan. You don't need a brand new identity. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to take one small sacred step. A step that feels honest. A step that feels nourishing. A step that feels like it was made for you, not for validation, not for applause, not for perfection. Something as simple as saying no to something that drains you, drinking your morning coffee slowly, without distraction, signing up for that class you've been thinking about for months, clearing a single drawer and reclaiming that space as your own. Putting your phone down and going outside just to feel the air. Let me tell you about Elena. She's 50, a Taurus with 2 grown children and a full-time job in accounting. For years, she told herself she had no time for self-care, no energy for creativity, no room for change. Until one morning, instead of immediately reaching for her phone, she lit a candle and wrote a single sentence in a journal. I want to feel like myself again. She didn't write more. She didn't plan out her week. She just wrote that. And she kept writing one sentence every morning after that. 2 weeks later, she picked up her guitar again. A month after that, she started walking each evening without her earbuds, just to be present with her thoughts. None of it was dramatic, but all of it was true. And that truth, spoken quietly but consistently, changed her life from the inside out. Taurus, that is the sacred power of one small step. Because you don't need to move fast, you just need to move in the direction of what feels real. And I know it's vulnerable. It's easier to stay in what's familiar. But every time you say yes to yourself, you strengthen a part of you that's been waiting to lead. So today I want you to choose something. Not for productivity, not to impress anyone, but as a way of saying to your soul, I see you. I hear you. I'm coming back. Maybe you start with 5 minutes of silence. Maybe you clean your nightstand and play something beautiful there. Maybe you allow yourself to cry when the emotion rises, without editing it or rushing through it. Maybe you say to someone, that no longer works for me, and let the silence afterward be enough. Whatever it is, let it be small. Let it be honest. Let it be yours. Because that's how real change begins. And Taurus, if you've listened this far, I want you to know you are already changing. Not because of this video. Not because of me, but because something inside you has already said yes. Yes to softness. Yes to truth. Yes to yourself. You're not late. You're not behind. You're blooming quietly, beautifully on time. And in the final reflection, we'll bring everything together. Your mind, your relationships, your passion, your small actions, all part of the same sacred return. So before we move on, I want to ask, what is one small soul-honoring step you can take today? What is one thing you've been quietly craving just for you? Share it in the comments. Because your small action might be the mirror someone else needs to take theirs. And remember, Taurus, you don't need to prove your worth by moving mountains. You just need to take one grounded, loving step. And trust, the rest will rise to meet you. Conclusion. You are the ground you've been seeking. Take a breath with me, Taurus. Not the kind you take because you must, but the kind you take when something soft inside you finally exhales. Because you've just walked through a journey, not toward reinvention but toward remembrance. You began by softening the mind, by letting go of the mental tension you've carried for too long. You allowed yourself to think less from obligation and more from truth. Then you entered the heart where relationships started to shift not out of conflict, but because your energy began to choose peace over performance. And from that peace you reconnected to something that was never truly lost. Your joy, your voice, your inner spark. And finally you said yes to something beautifully Taurus. A small sacred step. Not because the world demanded it, but because your soul whispered, "It's time." Taurus, this wasn't a journey to become someone new. This was a journey to reclaim the one you've always been, underneath all the roles, routines, and responsibilities. And I want to say this clearly. You are not lazy for slowing down. You are not selfish for wanting space. You are not lost because your dreams are shifting. You are blooming. Quietly. Boldly. On your own terms. You are the ground you've been seeking. The safety you've tried to create for everyone else? It's time to create that same safety within yourself. And here's what I hope you carry with you. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to earn your rest. You don't need permission to feel joy again. You only need to remember that everything you've been searching for is already inside you. So now I'd love to hear from you. What part of this journey felt like it was written just for you? Was there a moment that made you pause? A truth you didn't realize you were ready to hear? Leave a comment below. Because when you share your story, you don't just affirm your own healing. You might become the mirror someone else didn't know they needed. And if you've found comfort, clarity, or even the smallest shift in these words, I invite you to subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom. This is more than a channel. It's a sanctuary. A space for grounded souls like you to come home, again and again, to themselves. And we're not done. In our next episode, we'll explore how Taurus women can align with the upcoming Jupiter, Venus energies of 2025. Opening a rare window for deep healing, abundance, and emotional ease in your second house of worth and wellness. So stay close. Your journey isn't over. It's just beginning. And until then, I'll leave you with this. You don't need to rush to catch up. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to remember who you've always been, and choose her. The most rooted version of you is also the most radiant. You are the light you've been waiting for. Now, it's time to let her rise.